EAGLES, Eagles.
Monday morning, April 15th edition of Birds 365, year number 4. Joe Krause again in the chair today, along with John McMullen. Great lineup all week this week, Johnny Mac, for the anticipation of the draft coming up beginning a week from this Thursday. No, the Philadelphia Eagles will not select Caitlin Clark. They may go Iowa, when they get to their pick in the opening round, should they stay at 22. But a good morning to you, sir.
Morning. Yeah, they could use probably Caitlin Clark. Greatness is greatness, but maybe Iowa's on. Who knows? We know that's tight end. We know you get a lot of good offensive linemen from Iowa over the years, but April 15th. It's not exactly Christmas, but Eagles can report today for offseason work. So phase 1, it all begins today. 2 weeks, meeting, strength and conditioning, rehab, things like that. You can't do any on-field work, but guys are back in the building this morning.
And let's begin Birds 365 with some breaking news here today, Johnny Mac, on Birds 365. I will not be the replacement co-host for Birds 365 in year 4. Just want to put it out there. Make sure that we keep everyone at Crossing Broad in the loop, and I will not be the co-host going forward. But we will have an announcement coming shortly. But until then, we'll bring you the best that we can bring, which will be good, Johnny Mac, as we get ready for the draft.
Yeah, it's always an exciting time of year. I argue, the NFL draft might be even bigger than the Super Bowl from the perspective that every team is involved and every fan base is involved and every fan base gets excited, and there's so much optimism this time of year. And that's what the bad teams forget about, the teams that are both supposed to be contenders like the Philadelphia Eagles, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But I think Howie's done this typical good job of sort of draft proofing the roster. You shouldn't be forced to reach for a particular position. And I think there's this give and take, and I get this constantly about the Eagles got to do this. The Eagles got to be all in. And I was talking about that with Jody a little bit a few weeks ago. I don't know what that means. I mean, there's not a team in the NFL that goes all in at every position. You can't have an all-star at every position. You have to have role players. And the minute you start drafting for immediacy and you say, well, this guy might not be ready right away, but he's got a tremendous upside, but this guy might be a little bit more day one ready, but his ceiling is not nearly as high, you start making mistakes. So Howie does a good job of draft proofing the roster each and every year. And there's some obvious needs, not to that point, but you want to have at least a contingency at each position. And he's managed to accomplish that so far in the offseason, via the trade market, whether you talk about a backup quarterback like Kenny Pickett or free agency, which ranges from, guys that have to be impactful, Saquon Barkley, Bryce Huff, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, to those one-year flyers who are very important, because if you go back to the 27 Super Bowl season, I don't think anybody was sitting there saying, oh, Patrick Robinson, Chris Long, one-year deal, LeGarrette Blount, one-year deal in May or whatever it was. That's exciting. No, but they proved to be very valuable contributors. And when you hit on some of those one-year lottery tickets, occasionally, special things can happen. So whether you're talking about Devin White or Paris Campbell, or even Avonte Maddox coming back, CJ Uzomah most recently as a backup tight end, when you start hitting on on those 1-year players, special things can happen.
I don't know, and I'm not familiar with your entire body of work, John, and your entire history of covering the Birds and also covering this league. So I don't know whether or not you like doing mock drafts or
Oh, I
whether
hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it. It's an exercise in futility. I mean, and there's educated guesses and there's more education than outlier. But one of the things as you get closer to the draft, at least you have a clearer picture. Like they're so silly prior to free agency because if you start prior, we just talked about some of the guys. Well, you maybe needed a running back pretty early. Well, now you have Saquon Barkley. How does that work out for your mock draft? The safety position was an obvious need, and all of a sudden, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is back. So, and even edge rusher with Bryce Huff, even though you trade Hassan Reddick, you're not paying a guy $17 million a year to sit on the bench. That's not how it works in this league. So, yeah, I get it. People like him, but understand what they are and how he says all the time. He doesn't talk to anybody about the Philadelphia Eagles pre-draft. Occasionally, he'll let us in on some thought processes after the draft. So when you hear, oh, source says how, or blah, 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 or, take it with a grain of salt. I'll just put it like that.
NFL draft coverage all week here on Birds 365. Today at 8:20, John welcomes in our good buddy Jeff Kerr for conversation with Jeff. And then at 9:20, which will be hour number 2 of Birds 365, Devin Jackson from the Philadelphia Inquirer covers the draft for the Inquirer. So more draft coverage coming up in hour number 2 as well. John, I'm not asking you to do a mock draft, but just from the ability or from the thought process of identifying what you think the Eagles are focused on. Is it in this order? Cornerback, edge rusher, offensive lineman, game changer? Or is it offensive lineman, linebacker, game changer?
Well, they, from the Eagles' perspective, it's none of the above, because they don't know what the 21 picks before them are going to be. They have educated guesses, like I said, but there's a lot of teams that are going to go in different directions. So, I just wrote about this on SI and the fact that, you have generally a cloud of prospects when you pick. There's one team in the NFL, the Chicago Bears, who can go to sleep at night and rest assured that they're going to get the player they want because they have the number 1 overall pick. And then, it starts to go incrementally down. Number 2 is Washington, and they have a good feel because they know Chicago's going to take Caleb Williams. So they can feel comfortable and say, and then as you keep dropping and dropping, there's less certainty. And that the Eagles start at 22. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Now, over the years, we've gotten information. I've gotten information, and with certain Eagles picks or potential picks and things like that. 2017, I talk about a lot. They would have liked to draft Christian McCaffrey, which I think would have blown people's minds because they would have took a running back relatively early in the draft at number 14. He ended up going number 8. So they never even got close to it. In more recent years, when you look at, targeted trade ups for Jordan Davis and Devontae Smith, Jordan Davis, they started at 15. They knew Baltimore was going to take him at 14, so they had to jump over them to get him at 13. And then Devontae Smith is probably the most interesting year because the Eagles went down in that draft from 6 to 12 to get an extra pick, and then went back up because they had a cloud of 4 players that they hoped would have fell to number 12. Jalen Waddle, who went number 6, ironically, the Eagles' original pick. J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, who won 8 and 9. And then they saw the New York Giants at number 11, and they kind of knew the Giants were going to take Devontae Smith. That was the last player they wanted at 12. If they weren't able to trade up with Dallas, it was interesting because it was NFC East, NFC East, NFC East. Dallas wanted Micah Parsons. They knew, their one demand of the Eagles was offense, defense when they're making the trade. Are you taking an offensive player or you're taking a defensive player? The Eagles said offense. They felt comfortable. The Giants needed a receiver as well. They weren't going to go defense, so they could drop down and get Micah Parsons. It worked out well for them. They got extra draft capital. Eagles jumped over the Giants. They were able to get Devontae Smith. So these are some of the things. As you go down to 22, the Eagles are probably going to have a cloud of 4 or 5 guys that they would feel comfortable with at that position. Most of them are probably going to be gone.
That's what I was saying. That was going to be my follow-up question to you. So, a player that you like, that I guess many people like, the cornerback Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, he's gone. He'll be off the board. So he's not a guy that the Eagles are going to use draft capital to come up the ladder in the draft.
Well, you never know. That's the thing. If they like a particular player, and they've done it 3 years recently, and Jordan Davis, I mentioned DeMonte Smith, Jalen Carter, even last year, they moved up very slightly, but they wanted to make sure they got Jalen Carter. So they've done it in recent years a lot. And if somebody they really like starts falling near 22, they will jump up and try to get him. This could be the year you want to go down, in my estimation, because there's a lot of offensive tackles available, and they'll get good value because that's the odds game. There's so many good offensive tackles in the first round of the draft that should get value even at 22. But the Eagles don't need a tackle right now because Lane Johnson's still playing at an all-pro level. Jordan Mailata is playing at an all-pro level, just got a $66 million extension. So the thought process would be, well, you start him out at right guard, then you kick him out to right tackle whenever Lane says it's time to retire. And that's fine and dandy, but I don't think a lot of them, or at least the 2 players I think the Eagles like, would be Amarius Mims and Tyler Guyton. Amarius from Georgia, the Georgia connection, but very good athlete, tremendous ceiling as a player, very Eagles-y pick, tremendous upside. And then Tyler Guyton has the history with Lane Johnson. I think they would be very comfortable. But I don't think either of those players project all that well inside to guard. So it's sort of no man's land, 22. The 2 corners I think they'd be interested in are Mitchell, as you mentioned, and Terrion Arnold from Alabama. I don't think either of them will be anywhere near 22. But we'll see. Would
that be a decision, John? I didn't mean to cut you off there, but would that be a decision? Use those 2 players as the reference. Would that be a decision that Howie should make to move up, to trade, to get? Is that position on the 24 roster so important and so necessary for the success of the franchise in 24? Would it merit that movement?
I don't think so. And I might be the only person left in Philadelphia that would be interested to see if James Bradbury could have a bounce back year with Vic Fangio, because I think Vic is smart enough. He's been doing this long enough that he's going to put James Bradberry in the right positions to take advantage of what he does well. And he's a pure zone corner. The Eagles moved him around a lot last year, played him in the slot, played him on the other side when Slay was banged up. I thought that was a mistake for that particular player. And I think he had a bad season and people are really, really down on him. I think the odds are that insert name, whichever cornerback you like in the first round of the draft, comes in day one starter and plays at the level of James Bradberry in this complicated of a defensive scheme is sort of pie in the sky. So I think whomever, even if you're able to get Terrion Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell, and I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains with young corners. You kind of saw that last year, lesser degree. Obviously, these guys would be more talented. So it's certainly to a lesser degree, but it's a very complicated defense for young players. And I would be very cautious of wishing for that. And then when the second tier of corners, I don't think belong at 22. I think those would be trade down candidates. I know a lot of people are excited about Cooper DeJean from Iowa. We mentioned Iowa. And, I don't think the value. I think the Eagles are very big matching evaluation of players with valuation of draft spots. I think they could get him a little bit later. Same thing with Wiggins from Clemson and any other cornerback, Rackstraw from Missouri. Any of those guys, I think you can fall back. And if I'm trading back, the guy I want is Graham Barton from Duke, who's a natural interior offensive lineman. And he would be, to me, a day one starter at right guard. And then you have somebody valuable, really valuable, immediately.
Coming up right on the other side of the break, Jeff Kerr is going to jump in, and I'll turn everything over to John McMullen and Jeff Kerr, and they'll get a little bit deeper into the draft. Last thing then, John, just finish this before I exit out of here and turn things over to you and Jeff. Priority right now for the Eagles: interior lineman, offensive lineman, cornerback, game changer.
Who's the best player left? That's
Right.
what Howie will tell you. And it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. And that's why he's, better than most GMs. But there's not as many bad GMs as there have been in this league. They're getting smarter, understanding. I always use the cliche Brian Billick gave me. Need is the worst talent evaluator in sports. So if you're drafting because you think you have a need, you're not going to be good. And the Eagles will take the best player. And if that means an offensive tackle, they will take an offensive tackle. And they will say to the fan base, it will be up in arms because it's not sexy. They will say, look, this is how we do this. That's what Howie said a couple of years ago when he drafted Cam Jurgens, and everybody was upset. This is how we roll. This is how we do it. This is how we build this thing. And that will continue.
Birds 365 on a Monday, April 15th. We roll into our first commercial break. Jeff Kerr on the other side of the break. Quick reminder for the audience today. Del Val Insurance is out there. Your number one draft pick for car insurance. Save up to 40% on Del Val. They have 15 to 20 different insurance companies that they can use, and they can match what you need with the price you want to pay. Call Del Val Insurance at 215-354-0122. Back in a moment.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services. The first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back. Monday edition of Birds 365. Kind of exciting. April 15th, which is tax day. Not that part of it is exciting. But first day of OTAs. My buddy Jeff Kerr at Jeff Kerr CBS steps in. Jeff, what are you doing to celebrate day one of OTAs? You got some meetings scheduled, some voluntary workouts, anything, some rehab maybe?
Well, if I'm the Eagles, I'm getting my 2 hours of lifting in. I know that. That's what I would be doing on a day like today. Honestly, though, if I was an NFL player, I think I'd be excited because you're getting the on-field workouts, and that's what I enjoy about covering the league. That's what I think I would enjoy as a player.
Well, no on-field just yet. You got to wait for phase 2. But...
Well, you can throw the receivers, right?
Yeah, you can go out if you're a quarterback. I don't know. You can throw the football. They're very strict with phase 1. You can have some meetings. You can get, and by the way, that's important because a lot of new coaches, especially on the defensive side, so start to get to learn about Vic Fangio and company. Offensively, Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier, a lot of more commonality than I would have thought, Jeff, on the offensive side of the coaching staff. But defensively, a lot of new names.
A lot, yeah. I mean, Vic Fangio is obviously the biggest one. John, of the position coaches that changed, what do you think is going to have the biggest impact? Do you think it'll be in the secondary, or are you?
Well, it better be Doug Nussmeier. It better be the quarterback. It better be the quarterback coach because the Eagles, if they're going to be contender, Jalen Hurts has got to get closer to what he was in 2022 than 2023. Defensively, I guess I would say position coach wise. You have to say Clint Hurt, right? Defensive line from the perspective of that's the most talented group. So to me, we're back in the Jim Schwartz days, and the engine of your defense better be that defensive front. So
and he was a former defensive coordinator. That was one of the hires I was like, oh, okay. Like Vic was able to get this guy in here, but I agree. And I harped on this on WIP yesterday. I'm still going to harp on it. I'm still upset this team traded Hassan Reddick. I feel like you created a need you didn't have to create with a guy like that.
well, I think Howie's betting on Nolan Smith, man. I think everybody turned the page. Not everybody. I say that too often, but a lot of people turn the page on Nolan Smith. And Jeff, you know how this league works. If you take somebody in the first round, you're not going to close the book on them after 1 year. And I don't know. I mean, to me, it came down. It was a very similar situation, Jeff, to last year with the defensive backs when the Eagles kind of went into it and said we can keep 2 of the 3. So it was Slay, Bradbury, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Then it went back and forth. If you remember, originally it was supposed to be C.J. and Slay, and then it became C.J. and Bradbury, and it eventually ended up as Bradbury and Slay being back. But now it's not apples to apples because the Eagles brought in Bryce Huff. But once they brought in Bryce Huff, it became, all right, we can keep 2 of the 3. And Bryce Huff, Reddick, Josh Sweat. And it was just simpler to get Josh Sweat done. So I think if you look at the group as a whole, and Bryce Huff is going to be a good player. We'll see how good. Josh Sweat is a good player. He's got to, bounce back from that end of the season lull. But I think everybody on defense does. I find it ironic. I mean, Hassan didn't do anything in that final collapse either. So while it's fair to point it out with Josh, I think people give Hassan a little bit of a pass on that. And, let's be honest. If Howie gets it wrong with Nolan Smith, it's going to look bad. But you still have Brandon Graham. And that's a pretty deep group if everything works out well.
I think that's ultimately why they did do it, John. There was just too many chefs in the kitchen, I guess, is the proper phrase for it. I mean, where are you going to get these guys playing time right now? Nolan Smith wouldn't play if Hassan Reddick was here. And I want to defend Josh well in this too. Yeah, he didn't do anything at the end of last season. But
who did?
Yeah, well, exactly. But if you look at Josh's history, he's actually one of the better pass rushers in the final third of the season in terms of sacks and in terms of pressures. If you go back to 2020, 2021, 2022, Josh Sweat's among the top 10 in sacks and pressures. So I'm going based off history. Josh Sweat, 2023 wasn't Josh Sweat. But, yeah, again, you're right. Who did do anything on that defense? And that's where I go back to, if Nick wants to be lax on the players this year or change it around, he has every right to point at those games and say, well, I did this last year, and this is how you guys rewarded me.
Now, if draft night comes and we're inside 2 weeks for the draft, Jeff, and the Eagles.
By the way, can I just state I can't wait till the draft is over?
Oh, well, we all feel that way. Joe was asking me about mock drafts. How much do you hate mock drafts?
Hate them. Absolutely hate them. I hate I just don't like them. I have to do one. I don't mind doing it, but I don't do any trades. Oh, how come you don't do trades? Because I can't predict them, just like I can't predict any of that. There's no inside information.
It's exercise in futility, which people so many fans get so worked up about it. Just go to the next mock draft if you don't like somebody's mock draft.
I actually tell people when I write, I'm like, look, I'm doing this based on what a team needs, what they might do, and it just kind of gives you a blueprint of where this guy might go. And I think people respect that.
Yeah. Educated guess is all it is. And yeah, I mean, I was telling Krause, I'm like, before free agency mock drafts, I mean, they're just ridiculous. You know, before you know what a team is going to do and you bring it up with the Eagles. Well, if you don't get Saquon Barkley, you know, running back would be more relevant in the second and third round, but they got Saquon Barkley. So what does that say to your pre-mock draft? Same thing with CJ, Bryce Huff, and players like that. But what does it tell you if the Eagles do? And we were talking about sort of the cloud of prospects that might be there that the Eagles might be thinking about. And that's what I wrote about yesterday, Jeff, because they always have a cloud of guys that they would select. And, you know, as they come off the board, like Devontae Smith is the perfect example of this. He was the last one of the cloud of 4. And then they move up if they can to try to get that player. Or if they can't, they'll try to move down. They've had more success moving up in recent years. If somebody like Latu, Chop Robinson at edge rusher is in their cloud of prospects at 22, and that's where it ends up, that kind of tells me something not as concrete on Nolan Smith and turns it more towards Hassan Reddick, and they really didn't want Hassan Reddick back. That's how it would shake out to me. How would it shake out to you?
Well, if Latu falls to 22, you get him. If he's around there, you get him. I feel that way with a couple of these edge rushers, but Latu's the one.
Well, I'll throw out the medical people have to approve that as well. So
Yeah,
that's always a concern.
You and I talked, what was it, 2 weeks ago about the medical people's misevaluation of a certain receiver. Yeah. And of course, they're not here anymore. So, yeah, you see how that could play.
But that's the whole point. And I was talking to Matt Manicherian about that, the former NFL scout with the Browns and the Saints. And Matt was talking about the process, and he said, man, after the college all-star games were pretty concrete from the personnel perspective, and you got an almost pristine board, and then the coaches come in, and then the medical people come in, and then even the owner can come in certain cities at certain times and throws everything in the upheaval. If your medical people say, all right, there's concerns here, there's not much you can do as a personnel guy. You got to listen to them. You're not the expert. And by the way, not to defend the Eagles, but a lot of teams had concerns over DK Metcalf. It wasn't like the Eagles were the only team.
I know the Cardinals did. That's why they didn't pick him. They took Andy Isabella because of that. But yeah,
Isabella.
I don't even know where Andy Isabella's at right now. I know he's on the Bills for a little bit.
He's bounced around. I don't know. Andy, let's look him up. Andy Isabella. Yeah, but that didn't work out. Now, if you talk about the Eagles' early 20s, recent history hasn't been great.
It's been cringe.
They made a mistake moving up for Andre Dillard. They didn't do a lot of homework on him, and they said, why is this guy's so talented? And he starts balling, and they go up to get him. That was a mistake.
They got lucky that Jordan Mailata was already in the pipeline, and they developed him.
Yeah, well, very lucky. You know, you tend to forget those things when your 7th round pick turns into a $66 million left tackle. But the most notable, obviously, would be Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. Now, there's a lot of pointing. It's like that Spider-Man meme. Supposedly, the personnel staff wanted Jefferson, and the coaching staff wanted Reagor, so they're blaming the coaches. Even if you want to go back to Marcus Smith, that was an example of, I think, you know, the cloud of prospects that year evaporated, and all of a sudden you're left with the bag and you can't trade down, and you got to make a selection, and you end up with a Marcus Smith. And that was 25, 26, somewhere in that range.
I thought he was 20. Was he 25 or was he 24?
It's
been a while.
I don't know.
23 might have been there. Either way,
2014. That's been a while, but all right, let's look up Marcus Smith.
10 years, by the way.
26.
26. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's later, but it becomes more difficult as you get in the 20s for obvious reasons.
And this is where I will defend a team like the Eagles here when you're picking in the 20s. I always say there's probably in real life, there's probably about 17 to 19 first round picks, first round picks.
Yeah, real. Well, Jody and I used to have that argument all the time. He hated when I would say that because, he's a literal guy and he's like, there's 32 first round picks. And I would try to explain, well, yes, from a literal standpoint, but from scouting standpoints, no, they don't think there's 32 guys worthy of being first round picks.
And I'll be honest, John, there's going to be a guy that's going to be drafted in the top 5. I don't think is a first round pick this year. And he's a quarterback.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Quarterbacks always get put. I assume you're talking about McCarthy.
Yeah. I'm just not. I don't get it.
No, I don't blame you. I mean, when it's a big, I've said it pretty consistently on McCarthy. It's a big red flag to me that, if he's obviously we know quarterback is the most important position on the field. And if he's that type of player, you shouldn't be not throwing the football. You shouldn't be grounding him and in your most important game of the year, not allowing him to make an impact on the game. The only thing I would say to that in his defense would be it is Jim Harbaugh. So there is that old school mentality, and maybe he does have this tremendous upside. I can tell you from the people I talked to, Jeff, I mean, from early in the process, they love that kid. And they say the ceiling is there.
But there's the ceiling there at 4 or 5.
Well, I think
that's my issue.
I think they think the ceiling is there, but is the floor good enough? We always talk about floor versus ceiling. If you're top 5, your floor should be pretty high. I think, I would stay away from them that high. But there's so many quarterback desperate teams. It starts with Minnesota and Denver. Minnesota will probably be the one that gets them, I would think. And that's a good spot. I mean, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, if he comes back from the ACL.
Line's starting to get a little better there.
Darisaul's a great tackle. O'Neal's a great tackle. The interior's kind of iffy, but
you can fix that.
Yeah.
If you're developing guys like Darisaul, you can fix it.
Yeah. Well, they haven't been able to fix it for a long time, so I'm not going to go, that far. But I did see one executive told me that, and I said this last week on the show, and I forgot who told it to me, and I can't tell you. But I said, who's the second best quarterback? Because I'm a Daniels guy. I'm a JD.
I'm a Daniels guy. Honestly, I'll just, before you get to your point, John, to me, it's Williams, Daniels, and then I'm scared for the rest of them.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Now, he told me, tell me who Minnesota picks. And he said that because of where the quarterback is going to land. So, in other words, situation, scheme, you have Kevin O'Connell. I just gave you all the skill position talent. So what he was saying is the quarterback that lands there will have the better opportunity than maybe if you go to Washington or New England or Denver, or at least, because you got to succeed pretty quickly. So I thought that was an interesting sentiment, but I also think you have to have the right guy. So for Washington, you have Cliff Kingsbury. To me, that's Jaden Daniels all over. If you're O'Connell, to me, he's got to get Drake May or JJ McCarthy, because he's Sean McVay, Clint Kubiak, Shanahan, Kubiak, Gary Kubiak, not Clint, but Clint's, in that category.
Is Clint still there, isn't he?
No, he's with the Saints now.
That's right. That's right.
But everybody who plays that Shanahan-Kubiak offense, needs that play action guy capable of dropping back. And to me, that's McCarthy or Drake May. And then who am I missing? Who's the other one? No, that's all four.
No. Those are the four that we think are going to go in the top 5, definitely the top 10.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of Bo Nix or Penix being first-round picks.
Yeah. I understand, though, if Penix goes because you're going to run out of guys. So, and if you need one, then there are teams that need one. Like, if Penix went to, like, say, the Raiders at 12, I think I'd live with it. I'll agree with it, but I think I'd live with it.
Well, yeah, and Denver's going to take a quarterback. And I don't mind getting the 5th-year option on a quarterback. At least, that's a position you should value that 5th-year option for. So, if even, say, Bo Nix, if somebody comes back in at 32 to take him there, I think that's smart because of that 5th-year option. But I wouldn't take him that high. But those guys just get pushed up the board. So I'm with you. So if we get back to the Eagles, Jeff, that means tackles are getting pushed down the board.
And this class, by the way, when I was
loaded.
I love it. Like it just convinces me more that the Eagles are going to take one of these guys.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. I mean, if they stay at 22, it's hard to imagine that won't be the best player available. But they're not going to like all the tackles. They're going to like certain ones.
Do you think the kid from Washington they like?
I don't. I keep hearing Mims and Guyton. That's the two.
Guyton, I can see them drafted. And Guyton should be there at 22, by the way.
Yeah, and they're very Eaglesy picks, but my problem is I don't like the way those two project inside. And you have to start inside. I like the way Latham and the kid from Washington, they project better inside, but I don't know if the Eagles like
What
them.
about the guard from Oregon? Do you like him?
Yeah, he's fine. But you know who I like? Grant Barton. That's who I if the Eagles, if they can't get what they want or at 22, make a targeted trade up, I trade down and take that kid. I trade down to 28, 29 and take Grant Barton. I think you have a day one starter at right guard and you're off and running. That's what I would do if I were the Eagles. Now, would they take an interior lineman in the first round?
They've done it.
Maybe, but yeah, it hasn't. It's been a while. But Danny Watkins, we should have brought up as one of those picks. But
I'll tell you what, there was a guy though they drafted again. This is 18 years or 20 years ago now. When they drafted Sean Andrews, my high school self was like, this guy, he's got the size, he's got the athleticism, the lateral movement. This guy could be an all-pro for about 10 years. And
he was a great player.
He was on his way.
Yeah, hurt his back, and unfortunately, but that's way far back. I don't want to go back that far, but I think Howie would consider it later in the first round. Why not? Probably not at 22, but boy, I kind of feel like 22's no man's land for the Eagles. I really do.
That's why I keep saying in this draft, I feel like having 50 and 53 is way more important right now.
Yeah. 50 and 50. You better get a linebacker 50 or 53.
And I'll tell you what, if it ain't the kid from A&M or the Wallace kid from Kentucky, I think they got to find some way to get him. I don't know what round, but he's a good
with Cooper, Edgerrin Cooper, to me, he's the best linebacker. He's certainly the best fit for big scheme. There's no way he makes it to 50, right?
No. Like you know what's funny, John? This is why I hate doing mock drafts because I got to do the simulator stuff. And I did like 7 different simulators, and somehow he was there at 50. And I'm like, there's no way, right? Like,
I love those simulators. It's tremendous. Obviously, it's fun for a lot of people. I was talking to Brookie the other day, and he loves them. He's addicted to them, and they do a great job. But man, yeah, there's guys that are just not going to be there, and the Cooper's one of them. I'm with you. I'm like, you can't take him at 22.
Oh, the Lions took a linebacker at 18 last year, and it seemed to work out well.
The Lions draft last year was great.
I loved it, and it was so unorthodox. Like their best player in that draft was probably their third pick, and that was Laporta.
Yeah, Sam Laporta. Well, no, it might have been Brian Branch.
Oh yeah, that's right. Brian Branch went after Sam Laporta. Right.
That's how good it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Because they had Branch, Laporta, and the first round picks, Jamar Gibbs, who was tremendous, which was they got criticized for that, and Jack Campbell, to the point where Brad Holmes was taking victory laps after they won the playoff game at the divisional round playoff game. That might have been after the season. He was taking victory laps.
I love how the Lions at the owners' meeting say, hey, look, we have our process. That's all we're concerned about. We're not concerned about what people think of what we do. And they didn't brag about the results. They just said, look, this is what we do. We're not really concerned about it. It wasn't even like you said, it wasn't a victory lap either, which I like. It's like, look, we don't care what you guys think. This is what we're doing.
And that's the way it should be. I mean, Krause kept getting me to rank the positions. Now, I can rank the positions for you where I feel the Eagles have the biggest need, but the Eagles don't do it like that. And they're smart for not doing it like that, because they're not going to go at 22 and say, oh, maybe maybe Latu is there and he's cleared medically. And they say, well, we need a corner, so we have to take Cooper DeJean or Wiggins or somebody like that. And they're taking Latu. They're not taking a corner because you think they need a corner.
If they do take a corner, though, I'd love to see them take Wiggins if they have to take one.
Boy, he's so skinny. We went through this with that, and people will bring up with Devontae, but I mean, man, corner.
Rob Ellis and I were talking about this yesterday on WIP. Me, Rob, and Morgani, and they're like, and they liked what I pointed out. Well, Bobby Taylor and Troy Vincent were skinny too. It worked out pretty well.
Yeah, but Bobby wasn't.
Bobby was bigger up here.
Bobby was a big dude for a corner. Yeah, he's like 170 though. I mean, Troy Vincent's like, James Bradbury compared to Wiggins.
Like
yeah, I would say Wiggins can run, and maybe he turns into a great player, and I hope he does. I root for everybody turn into a great player.
Yeah,
but
you know what I always say with this draft, John? Maybe it's just old school arrogance, but you can evaluate any prospect you want. Just tell me where they're going, and I could probably not make a good prediction on how they're going to be. Like Drake May, I'm rooting for him to be really good, but if he's going to Patriots, not exactly thrilled.
Well, I mean, situation matters with quarterbacks. It matters for everybody, but it really matters for quarterbacks. And if you go to a situation, that's why the GM I was talking to said, tell me who's going to Minnesota. And I'm, they're not going to be able to get Daniels, obviously, or, we don't know. Somebody might like JJ McCarthy more than Drake May. It's interesting because Josh McCown is out there now as the quarterback's coach. And he coached Drake May in high school with his own son. Remember that year?
Yeah.
He was only around for part of the week because he was going back to Charlotte to coach his kid in high school.
I have so much respect for a guy like that, by the way.
I love Josh McCown. But he was only here for a short period. But man, everybody told me that guy is going to be a future head coach. I mean, he just is so. And think about it. One of the criticisms I said, and the Eagles tried to hire him immediately as an assistant, but they wanted him to go the normal routes, quality control. And Josh is like, somebody's going to pay me to be backup. And sure enough, somebody did.
Yeah, know your worth, right?
Yeah. And obviously you make more money that way. So he had a little bit left in the tank. And then it was Houston that got on the ground floor, and they interviewed him to be the head coach, and people just criticized the crap out of him for that. And I was like, I always said this, and I when I covered the NBA, I said it about Derek Fisher, because I heard the same thing when Derek Fisher got hired straight out of being a player. And I'm like, he played 18 years or 19 years. In the case of McCown, same thing. He played 18.
And he was a point guard.
Yeah, he was a point guard. In the case of McCown, he played 18 years in every offense imaginable, Jeff. Who knows more about offensive football than Josh McCown?
The guy caught passes at one point in his life.
Yeah.
In a meaningful game.
Whomever, and I think he's going to be a head coach at some point.
And
by the way, it's going to happen really quickly if Minnesota, whoever they take, turns into a good quarterback early in their career. He's going to be a head coach really, really quickly. So keep an eye on Josh McCown, but I digress. When you bring up specifically linebacker with this team, that's the one team where I said Howie's done a very good job draft proofing this roster, I think, except linebacker.
Yeah, I would agree. They don't like we said, they don't need a corner. They don't need an edge rusher. They don't need an offensive, but linebacker. And I go into the year looking at it's going to be probably the Kobe Dean and Devin White. Yeah, you need something there.
Boy, that would be ballsy going into a season with Nakobe Dean and Devin White, especially this team is considered, and most people consider them, a legitimate contender. And then, think of it from the standpoint of you're a play away from having to play Oren Burks, probably. Oren Burks would be ahead of Ben Van Sumeren.
By the way, Oren Burks is a really under the radar good sign.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. In fact, I feel more comfortable with their third linebacker than their first or second linebacker. Good special teams player. You saw him get forced into action in the Super Bowl. It won't be too big for him, but they need help at linebacker.
Badly. I still think they kind of need some help at safety, but they can fix that in the draft. There's still some good safeties on the free agent market, so I'm not as concerned. But linebacker, when you're banking on Devin White to be 2020 Devin White, and everybody's telling me he's so far removed from that, I like the kid. I'm going to be rooting for him like crazy to turn his career around, but you just can't leave Devin White on an island. He's not going to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, the contract tells you a lot, right? 1 year, $4 million, 3.5 guaranteed. I mean, there's 31 other teams out there. It's not like he turned down a 4-year, $40 million contract to come to Philadelphia. I hate to break it to people.
Yeah.
So the contract tells you a lot.
John, I wanted to point this out too. So, I had some free time Saturday. It's a slow time around the league, let's be honest. And I wrote about what a Devontae Smith extension would look like. And it kind of turned around a bit because I wanted to add A.J. Brown in the mix. And I said, okay, so how does this affect A.J. Brown? I actually said it doesn't in terms of Devontae's contract, but the Eagles got to make a decision on A.J. Brown next year because the guarantee money is gone.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be the Devontae contract. I think people are saying, why aren't they signing Devontae? It's kind of up to Devontae because the Eagles are kind of pigeonholed. I wrote about this at SI. They're kind of pigeonholed. They can't put him up ahead of AJ, right? They can't pay him more than $25 million.
And AJ's top 5 in the league right now. It's funny, John. So when I was looking at the top contracts, it's the elite guys. It's like, and you're still Tyreek, AJ, Cooper Kupp. And then you get to like Michael Pittman. It's like, well, Devontae Smith's better than Michael Pittman.
I agree with that. But here's the thing about Devontae. If his agent is smart, and I think he is, I'm waiting for Jefferson and Chase. They're tied. Will raise all boats, and he will make more money if he just waits for those guys. Now, he might say, you know what? I love it here. $22 million is life-changing money with all that guaranteed and say, let's do it and make it very team friendly. I think if that were the case, the Eagles would do it today.
And I think you would agree with me too. I think Devonta Smith really does like it here.
Oh yeah, I do. But I also think, why not wait? Why not, if you feel comfortable, wait for Jefferson, wait for Chase, and the tide will rise all boats because those guys are going to crack well over what Tyreek Hill gets, $30 million a year. So, and by the way, that's AJ in the future as well, because AJ is going to be even higher than, so I'm glad he went down that route, and make sure you follow Jeff at Jeff Kerr CBS. Does a tremendous job. Read him there. Covering the Phillies a little bit now, so you get some baseball involved.
I had Bryce Harper tell me on Friday. I asked him if he feels like it's a little pressure there, not if the team is pressing it. He just looks at me and smiles. He goes, "Jeff, for 14 games in, man." I'm like,
14 games in, yeah. Well, Philadelphia has, and Bryce knows that, Philadelphia has a football mentality. So every game is life and death.
It's funny because he knows I know that, but that's what I like about a lot of baseball players. They respect the fact that you ask it, because because these guys aren't available every day. So you got to ask it when you can. And, he gave the good smile because I know but I got to say it.
And hopefully the Phillies can make a deep run this year. Hopefully the Sixers get out of the play-in round. So,
by the way, John, I wanted to ask you this: did you agree with a lot of these teams kind of tanking to avoid them?
I never believe in tanking, but I'm like, because I heard it from the Sixers fans' perspective as well. Well, you don't want to be in the bracket and same bracket as Boston. Well, yeah, if you, if your only goal is getting out of the second round, which maybe it is because they haven't been able to do that in quite a long time, but you're going to have to beat them eventually.
Yeah. Well, the Sixers really weren't going to get them unless A, B, and C happened, and neither happened. So they played.
I would have liked, if I were the Sixers, to get the hell out of the play-in. I don't care what everybody thinks.
I think that's what they wanted, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah. Everybody thinks, well, they'll get out of that. Well, all they got to do is lose 2 games, and Joel sprains an ankle in the first couple minutes, and they're done. So
I will say this for them: the Knicks getting the 2 seed might be the best thing to happen to them if they can beat Miami, because I think that city is so desperate for that franchise to win. They are talking themselves into their. I actually heard someone say to me, they're going to beat the Sixers in 5 games. I said, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I know a lot of Knicks fans. They have been long-suffering Knicks fans since the days of Patrick Ewing and John Starks. Yeah, the Sixers will beat that team if they get there.
Yeah, they got to get there first.
Got to get there first.
And we all know Miami, it's playoff Jimmy is
playoff Jimmy's tough, man. Playoff Jimmy, playoff Spoelstra.
But I will say this, it just from talking to people who cover the Sixers on a regular basis, just being at some of these games as a season ticket holder, that vibe has been completely different since Embiid came back. It's like, all right, we got our MVP back. Let's go.
Well, yeah. But, best ability is availability. Great man once said that, and that's always an issue.
I believe Jody Mack says that too.
Yeah. Joel Embiid, unfortunately, a lot of issues when it comes to being available. And hopefully you don't have that lull in the playoffs where he misses a game because of some reason and then comes back and he's not the same. And has haunted the Sixers for a number of seasons. But you brought up, and I'll leave it there. And thanks. I always leave you too long, and I apologize, Jeff, but you're always fun.
I don't work till the afternoon, John, so feel free to talk away.
You brought up Devontae and the contract and AJ and the impending contract. Does that put receiver outside the box thinking at 22? Potentially. Especially you're talking Thomas from LSU. I would say
I love Brian
specifically
Thomas.
might fall to that spot. Do you have to consider him at that point?
I think you should. But I think I think it would excite the fan base because you're going to have Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, and Brian Thomas for at least a year. But I'll tell you what. How about Ricky Pearsall in the second round? Did you take him?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. I do say in that type of instance, certainly with Thomas, and even so with Pearsall, because Paris Campbell isn't the answer as the third receiver,
and Devontae Parker, I don't think he's making the team.
No, and I don't even think Devontae's more the backup for the outside guys. He's not going to play in the slot. So, but at some point, and Nick Sirianni always calls it a good problem. And I always say, Jeff, good problem. The word problem is still in the actual definition. So you got to make Saquon happy. You got to make AJ happy. You got to make Devontae happy. You got to make Dallas happy. Now you got to throw a big time receiver in the mix as well. That's making things difficult for Kellen Moore. It's a good problem, but not necessarily the best problem.
By the way, Jalen and Saquon working out together this offseason.
Yeah, why not?
I'll play them.
No. And you're obviously a Penn State guy. I've talked a lot about Saquon. Look, I don't get it from the perspective of the Eagles and how they typically do business. And I've been covering this team too long. I think they went out of their comfort zone. But if it works, great.
Yeah, if you get a Super Bowl out of it, I think they can say whatever they want. Oh, we always believe in. Look at the guys we had in our history. Brian Westbrook. Last played here 10 years ago. Come on, guys.
What bothers me about that, it shouldn't, Howie can do what he wants, but that's bullshit because he's part of the reason this league has devalued that position.
He started the trend.
Yeah. And they always like when they start trends. And why don't that? I would have more respect for them if they just said, you know what? Now people have gone too far and we're going to go back in the other direction.
Yeah, we're going to set a trend that we stopped.
Yeah, because people have taken it too far.
This is what if I was Howie, someone would ask me that about my history of running backs. I said, look, we just feel like this guy is a game-changing player. He was, and you can't say he was misused, but we liked the player that much. We were willing to just kind of change our whole approach.
Well, I lied. I'm keeping you one more. Here's the thing, because I got to cover Randy Moss. And talking to Kelsey about Fletcher, Kelsey said Fletcher and Jason Peters were the two players he played with that could succeed in any scheme, regardless of philosophy, coaching, they would be successful. I think you should have added Lane and AJ, but that's a different conversation. He said those are the two players. There are certain guys. I got to cover Randy, John Randall, players like that. They succeed no matter what. Even at wide receiver, where by definition, you need a vehicle to get you the football. If you're that good, you're going to show up. Saquon didn't do that too often in New York. He did it as a rookie, and he had a pretty good season in 2022, but it wasn't great.
My counterpoint is the Giants' offensive line has been one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen.
But I saw Adrian Peterson. I should have brought him up. Adrian Peterson won the MVP in this league with Christian Ponder playing quarterback in an average offensive line.
And he carried that team on his shoulders.
Yeah. So
I loved Adrian Peterson, by the way. Last week they had on NFL Network had on top games from his rookie year. I'll never forget that game against the Chargers.
Chargers? Yeah, 296, I believe.
Yeah. I remember what's the funny part of that game? I think it was Camardi, wasn't it? Didn't he have a return field goal for a touchdown before the half or something?
Yeah.
That was one of the more
Brad
exciting.
Childress kicking a long field goal. Moron, Brad Childress. But no, I like Brad. I'm with you. But I think difference makers are difference makers no matter what. but you don't have to be a difference maker. You can just be a really good player. So we'll see how it shakes out. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the time. At Jeff Kerr CBS does a tremendous job. Great guy. We'll have him on leading up to the draft, after the draft. Jeff is one of our staples. Thanks, bud. Talk to you soon. Hopefully I'll see you down there soon because, we're going to get some player availability coming up. We'll get some Howie Roseman pre-draft availability coming up. So things are ramping back up. Get excited.
I'm excited for the draft. It's I can't wait till it's over, but I'm one of those people when it hits, it hits, and
it's a fun 3 days.
It really is.
Getting there is not so fun sometimes.
Now all I got to do is get the NFL to actually give me their broadcast schedule. Because I do work for a broadcast partner. I would like the schedule when the other networks get the schedule. NFL, can you do that? So I can at least type it in and have it ready to go when you tell me to release it?
All right, buddy. Well, we're getting in the weeds with the NFL, but the NFL does what the NFL wants because they can. Guess what? We didn't even get to Isaiah Rodgers. I should have gotten to that, but, maybe we'll see if he'll ever be reinstated, but something to talk about down the road.
Yeah, before I leave, when do you think that would happen by now?
I would think it would happen by April 15th today, the offseason.
Yeah.
That was the date I was looking at, and it hasn't happened. So, and I asked Brian McCarthy about it yesterday. No news. So we'll see what's going on there eventually.
It's been really bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Calvin Ridley was reinstated almost immediately.
Yeah. It's weird, the timing on these. There's no trend, so you can't figure it out.
Yep.
At Jeff Kerr CBS, Jeff, you doing the Phillies this week, today?
I'm not doing them today, so I'm doing them tomorrow. I'm going to Sixers Wednesday. I might do the Phillies Wednesday, too.
All right, all over the place. So you'll see Jeff Kerr out there. And you'll see him next week here leading up to the draft. And then we'll get him post-draft to talk about all things Eagles. Thank you, Jeff. We got to get to a break. I've gone way over. People probably yelling at me, but hey, it's always fun to talk with Jeff Kerr and people who are very invested in this particular team in the NFL. More Birds 365 after the break.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
And back here on Birds 365 on a Monday. 10 days, I guess, John, until the first day of the draft. 10 days counting today until we get to the first day, till we get to Thursday night live from Detroit. Will the Eagles go predominantly defense like they have in the last two drafts? And will they draft for need? I'm trying to apply what you referenced in terms of need. And the need on this team, the Eagles should draft to fill the need. You don't believe that, or you don't think so?
No, I think you get in trouble when you do that. I kind of, linebacker's probably their biggest need on paper, all-Paul linebacker, stacked linebacker. And they're not taking a linebacker at 22. One, it's not the deepest linebacker draft. Two, they don't value the position enough. And that's why you bring in people like Devin White, as I mentioned, draft proofing the roster. Even Oren Burks, they also signed as, who right now would project as the third linebacker. It would be nice to add some talent at that particular position. But, it's when you say, when you go into the draft and say, I need this position in the first round, you're not going to be a GM for very long. I don't know if any of those guys exist anymore who go into the draft and say that the closest would be the quarterback desperate teams. And you'll see Denver try to trade up, Minnesota try to trade up. And they're probably going to make mistakes. I mean, it's just the way it is. If you pigeonhole yourself into the mentality that I have to do this, it's probably not going to work out for you. Unless you have the number one overall pick, and then you take whoever you want.
Well, you'll know the answer to this. I'd have to look it up to figure it out. But 2022 draft, 2023 draft. Right?
Yeah.
The Eagles drafted how many players on the defensive side of the ball?
Well,
we obviously know about. Yeah, we obviously know Jordan Davis
and Jalen Carter. Yeah.
Jalen
By
Carter.
the way, which I kind of pointed out, is the reason why we were talking about the new assistant coaches, and why I think Clint Hurt, who is the new defensive line coach, I think he's the most important defensive hire from a positional coach standpoint, because they have to build this defense, literally build this defense on the foundation of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. That's where they have to build the defense. So I think he's very important. If you go back to 2022, they didn't have a lot of picks. So they went Jordan Davis, Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean, and then you're down to the 6th round and you're just throwing darts with Kyron Johnson, Grant Calcaterra. So I don't know how much of a theme you'll get from that, other than, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. They need them to pick it up in year 3. And last year it was Carter and Smith in the 1st round. Sidney Brown in the 3rd round, Kaylee Ringo in the 4th round, Moro Ajomo in the 7th round. And this is a big year for Nolan Smith. Jalen Carter's a star. He's just got to increase his conditioning and stay out of trouble, and he's going to be fine. I do like the upside of Sidney Brown and Kaylee Ringo. And we'll see about Ajomo. Maybe he's got more of an opportunity to earn some playing time. I do like the upside, but Sidney's coming off a torn ACL, so I think he's young enough where that won't be a concern. But you never know with those types of injuries. Just doing something on Chris Maragos the other day. So, Chris injured his ACL and PCL during the Super Bowl season. If people remember him, team captain, great special teams player. Surgery didn't go well. The rare non-successful surgery you never hear about. His career essentially ended, and he was awarded, I think, $40 some odd million in damages. Sued Dr. James Bradley, who did the surgery. He sued Rothman, who was in charge of the rehab. And the Eagles have since changed the way they do things medically. He's still trying to get that money. When you just say somebody's going to come back, you always have to put that caveat on it. Well, not always, but I do. Sidney's young enough that if everything goes well, he should be able to overcome that.
Devin Jackson from the Philadelphia Inquirer will join John McMullen for more draft conversation here in hour number 2 of Birds 365. We'll talk draft all week long here on Birds 365 leading into next week. And then, of course, the live Thursday night round 1 of the draft. I still don't understand, John, or I still can't wrap my arms around the thought process from the people in charge, from Howie and his team. What are they looking at prior to the draft? Are they looking at Bradbury and Darius Slay and saying, hey, we better get a cornerback? Are they looking at the linebacker position and saying we better get help there? Or not? How do they do their draft board? I don't understand it. If you're not putting need, if need is not part of the equation, it's got to be some part of the equation.
Well, yeah, it's that if you have 2 players who have equal grades and you have a bigger need, you're probably going to go with the need, but you're not going to take a lesser graded player just because you have a need would be the best way I describe it. So basically, the smallest draft board I've ever heard of is Bill Belichick, who had, a small group of picks one year, 5, 6 picks. I forget the exact number. He whittled it down to 75 players. That's it. That's all the players he would consider taking. So you look at your spot, the Eagles start at 22. And again, you have these groups of players. You make educated guesses. You have a good feeling, and they have a better feeling than we do about certain players are not going to be there. Caleb Williams ain't going to be there. Jaden Daniels isn't going to be there. Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, even Dallas Turner, players like that, are not going to be there. So you tend to hone in on a group of 4 or 5 players, and you say, we're comfortable with these guys at this position. If they all evaporate, you try to go up. If you can't go up, you might go down because you say there's a drop off. So, but you stack the board horizontally and vertically, and you want to make sure need is not why you're taking a particular player at a particular spot.
last thing, and then I'll get to a break. Devin Jackson from the Philadelphia Inquirer will come up on the other side of the break and join John McMullen. Devin covers the NFL draft for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Stay with us right here on Birds 365. Good segment coming after the commercial break. If Howie has identified a player that checks the box as a need, will he trade up to get that player in the first round? In other words, if
always does
cornerback
it. He's done it more recently than anybody else. He traded up to get, as I mentioned, he traded up to get Devontae Smith. He traded up to get Jordan Davis. He traded up to get Jalen Carter. Went very small, but he wanted to. He moved up one spot last year just so nobody else could trade up and get Jalen Carter. That's how badly he wanted that player at that particular position. So his recent history is he will make targeted trade ups to get players that he values. Now,
then the last thought before I get to the break, is there a player that checks that box that would that Howie would strongly consider to go up and get?
There's always going to be at 22. The question is, how high can you go up? He doesn't have a third round pick this year. Howie's more willing to use future picks. You could use a player to manipulate draft positioning. There's a lot of ways you can go, but if he's got that cluster of 3, 4, 5 players and they're all off the board except one, and he can go up to 19, he'll probably try to do that. You also need 2 to tango. Not always the team you want to go up. You can't always trade up. Sometimes you want to trade down. You can't always trade down. That's why you have to be comfortable also with that last case scenario. All right, if I got to pick a 22, I got to pick a 22, and you got to take the best player left on your board. What you can't do is make that rash decision. Eagles most recently probably did it with Andre Dillard. They didn't do a lot of homework on Andre Dillard. They didn't think he would be where he was supposed to go much earlier in the draft. He started bowling on draft night, and they said, this kid is too talented. Let's go up and get him. Didn't work out for the Eagles, but Jordan Mailata did, so it kind of masked that mistake.
Let's get to a break here in hour number 2 of Birds 365 with John McMullen. Devin Jackson sitting in the green room, standing by. He'll join John McMullen after the break. Back in a moment.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Welcome back. Happy OTA day. First day of off-season work for your Philadelphia Eagles, and we're going to put Devin Jackson to work, making his Birds 365 debut. Real D_Jackson. Make sure you follow him on X and Twitter. Works for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Read him, Inquirer.com, doing a tremendous job for the Yankee covering the NFL draft. Good to have you, Devin. First of all, welcome in.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, John. I'm excited to be on here and talk some NFL draft with you.
Yeah, it's a fun time of year for NFL fans. I think we all love the draft. I always say it's the most, I think obviously the Super Bowl is the biggest deal in the NFL, but in a lot of ways, I think the NFL draft is the biggest day from the perspective of it involves all 32 teams. And everybody gets excited. Good teams, bad teams, everybody's involved. I want to. You've done a tremendous job keeping on top of the Eagles' top 30 visits. So I want to start there. When you're evaluating the draft and making your sort of educated guesses, how much importance do you place on those top 30 visits, and why or why not?
Yeah, so I think it really depends team by team in terms of, what they are looking for, what types of players they're bringing in. But I think top 30 visits are important just because you get a feel for what the teams or specifically what the Eagles are really valuing or really doing their homework on. You look at some of the top 30 visits last year, they had both Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith as visits. This year, they have a number of players from defensive backs to offensive linemen. There's been a few receivers that have been reported visits. So at least at the very certain in this particular class, they've been doing a lot of work on defensive backs and offensive line. And that seems like, kind of where they're trending, but also edge rushers as well. So it seems like, they're especially at those premium positions, they're doing a lot of homework. And when you look at the top 30 visit history, the Eagles typically take one or two players from their top 30 visits. So it shows like, while it might not be the same for every team, at least locally, Howie Roseman likes to do a lot of work on these prospects, sending some personnel out to various pro days as well. And it really is kind of like putting the pieces together in terms of figuring out exactly what the Eagles might do or where they may be trending towards. And also, it could be a bit of a smokescreen as well, too. Last year, the Eagles brought in Bijan Robinson for a pre-draft visit. And a lot of people thought that, they may end up going that route. But obviously, they end up going with Jalen Carter and taking Nolan Smith as well in the first round. So it's a little bit of both, I would say. While it seems like they take a couple players from the top 30 visits, they also bring in some of the top guys as well, just for those teams that may be around them or picking around them. They may want to make a move and jump up for that particular player. So it's a little bit of a back and forth game, but the top 30 visits are always interesting at the very least to see what types or what positions they are really valuing in a particular draft.
Yeah, I'm with you, Devin. I think I look at the themes and I see that the same way you do. I say, well, they're looking at a lot of offensive linemen, so you can pretty much make a good bet they're going to take one in those top 3 picks. They're doing a lot of homework at certain positions. I always think that's valuable. I always say as well that those visits can go positively and they can also go negatively, which I think people kind of put, out of their purview. I go back to Darius Geis, who there were a lot of rumors about him having arguments with Deuce Staley, which the Deuce always said that never happened, but clearly it didn't work out well. And the Eagles kind of ruled him out at the time. So they could be good meetings and they could be bad meetings that turn you in a different direction. But I think you're right. They're always interesting. So let's start at number 22 overall. And the Eagles tend to do the whole cloud of picks, potentially try to get 4 or 5 guys in a grouping and say, all right, if one of them falls to this particular spot, we'll probably take them. If I were to say to Devin Jackson, put on your Howie Roseman cap and give me 4 or 5 players at 22 that might be in the mix, what would your best educated guess be?
Yeah, so first player that comes to mind is Cooper DeJean from Iowa. When you think about a player and kind of the skill set and what they're looking for in the secondary, he's the type of player that feels like it's going to be available at 22, but also fit what Vic Fangio likes to do with his defensive backs, moving them around, playing different types of coverages, playing off coverage, zone coverage. I mean, and DeJean kind of really matches that. So to me, he's one of the first players that come to mind in terms of being in the mix for 22. I'll also go another defensive back and say Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. They just recently brought him in for a pre-draft visit, and there's been a lot of back and forth in where exactly his draft stock lies. Some people think he's more of a late first rounder, early second rounder. Some thinks he's like in the middle of that first round, and obviously he dealt with a Jones fracture in his foot through the draft process, so he hasn't really been able to do full field work, but he still ran a reported 4.47 40-yard dash at his pro day. So
pretty impressive with that Jones fracture, by the way.
Right. And the Eagles sent their defensive back coach to his pro day as well. So to me, defensive back wise, those 2 guys make sense in terms of being available and being on the board for the Eagles. And then other players I'll look at Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. 22 may be a little bit early for him, but also I think about, if they don't take him then, he's not obviously going to be there at 50. But they've really done a lot of work on him. They met with him at the Senior Bowl. They met with him, at the Combine. They brought him in for a pre-draft visit. He has a connection with Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson has been his mentor. So, while, maybe defensive back, maybe a bit more pressing need, maybe edge rusher, maybe a bit more pressing as well. I think that they are going to walk away from this draft at least addressing the future of the right tackle position behind Lane Johnson when it's all said and done. So those will be the top 3. And then a couple other players that I would say need to monitor and see where exactly they end up going on draft day. I would look at Jared Verse from Florida State. Some people think he's going to go earlier in the first round, maybe middle of the first round. But he's the type of guy that if he starts falling down the board, I could see the Eagles making a move for him. And I know they've invested quite a bit in the edge rusher position over the last couple of years, obviously bringing Bryce Huff, drafting Nolan Smith last year. But at least his particular style of pass rusher, I think, is the type of pass rusher that they're looking for in terms of, having that power, having that, speed to power conversions as a pass rusher, the size that he brings to the table as opposed to what the Eagles already have on a roster. So to me, if he's a guy that starts to fall or falls into the range of the Eagles within a few picks, I could see them making a move for him. And then the final player that I'll list is Laiatu Latu from UCLA. They've done a lot of work on him as well in terms of, meeting with him at the combine, bringing him in for a pre-draft visit, and he's just such a toolsy, talented pass rusher, and obviously the medical concerns are what they are, but they seem to be really interested in what he brings to the table, and I just feel like if he's there at 22 and say DeJean is off the board by then, and obviously Verse as well, I could see them really being enamored with him and end up taking him.
Would Verse be the guy you kind of mentioned? Howie's recent history, Devin, has been that targeted trade up, and that he'll go up a few spots to get one particular guy. Would that be Jared Verse in this draft, or if he starts to fall to 18 to 19, that range?
I could certainly see it. I just think about, the teams in that range. Cincinnati's at 18, the Rams are at 19. And if he's there at 19, the Rams feel like the most likely candidate to take him, just based on what they need at edge rusher. So, if the Eagles want to jump ahead of the Rams to make sure that they get their guy, I could see them absolutely see them go up and get him. So to me, he feels like one of the trade up candidates in terms of what he could do. But I also look at a guy like J.C. Latham from Alabama as a potential trade up candidate too, just because he has that guard versatility and obviously played right tackle at Alabama this past season. But he would certainly be an interested candidate for a trade up as well, just based on because he's figures to go around that area too with Cincinnati Bengals having a need at tackle. So I could see those two players particularly being of interest. And honestly, if the Eagles want to double down and Cooper DeJean is their guy, which seems like they're really interested in what he does and what he brings too, I could see them making a move for him, a small move up for him as well.
That's interesting with Cooper because I haven't focused, to be honest, on Cooper as much because of that versatility. In other words, I think the Eagles need a true outside corner, Devin, with the age of Slay and Bradbury. And I think Cooper's more of a versatile piece, as you mentioned. He can be, a lot of people think he's going to be safety at the next level. He can play corner. He's certainly athletic enough to play corner. But I think in some ways that might hurt him from the perspective of, well, I don't want to go overboard, but the Eagles signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Sidney Brown, even though he's coming off the torn ACL. They love him. They called him a Red Star player, perfect fit. Reed Blankenship, they're still, think is a really good player. I don't know if they're looking for that Malcolm Jenkins type who can move all around like Jim Schwartz, as opposed to the typical Vic Fangio mindset. We're going to play a lot of zone coverage. We need smart players, but I don't see a lot of that moving around, at least recently with Vic Fangio. I think that could hurt Cooper DeJean. Am I on the wrong track there?
I think you make some interesting points in terms of, sometimes versatility can be a negative because you can do so many things that maybe there isn't a particular calling card. But I do think DeJean can be just a typical outside corner. I do think that, we talk a lot about versatility and that's always a big talking point when talking about prospects, just because the more that you can do, the better your NFL chances are. But, well, I mentioned that, he brings versatility to the table and he can do a lot of different things in terms of coverage and being moved around. He did stick out outside in coverage most of the time at Iowa. He was primarily an outside corner that played a lot of zone coverage, that played a lot of off-man coverage at Iowa and did a lot of good things. And instead, not just with his ball skills, but with being able to read plays, seeing things in front of him, and being really smart in kind of the chances that he takes. So I think from that perspective, as opposed to just having that versatility, I do think in terms of the football IQ he plays with, the speed, the athleticism, and what he brings as a down-to-down player, and not just making the splash plays, but making the the right plays, making the needed plays, being a run supporter on the perimeter. He does a lot of those different things in addition to being versatile and being able to be moved around in the secondary, which I think will be a really good fit for Vic Fangio, because he knows when what he sees in front of him, he's able to go and make the plays and get the defense off the field on third down, and play the different types of coverages that Iowa asked him to, that I think would fit very nicely into Vic Fangio's scheme. So that's why I've really kind of zeroed in on DeJean and in terms of the Eagles' interest in him, just because it's kind of multi-layered with him. It's not just being able to be in kind of that chess piece in the secondary, but I truly think he can fit outside corner and be a really successful player at corner as well.
Well, you mentioned versatility, and we'll turn that to the offensive side, because I think if you're playing the odds and the Eagles are forced to stay at 22, there's so many offensive tackles, and we know the foundational principles of this team. And you'd say, well, if you're a betting man, let me go tackle. But you also have Lane Johnson still playing at an all-pro level. You have Jordan Mailata. You just gave $66 million. You want somebody who's able to start at right guard, then kick out and potentially replace Lane Johnson down the line. To me, the most Eaglesy picks of the group would be Amarius Mims and Guyton, but I don't think they're the best to project inside. I think that would be Latham and the kid from Washington. Who do you think projects better starting out inside?
Between Latham and Fontenot?
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
anybody, or if it's somebody else of the whole group. Because I could be wrong about Mims. He's such a great athlete.
Yeah, Mims is such a great athlete, but I don't think he's really a necessarily a fit for guard, just because I think his athleticism, his size, it just makes a lot of sense at tackle, and he's still developing as a run blocker. I think what you're getting Mims for is what he brings in pass protection, not necessarily what he brings as a run blocker. So I think when we talk about kind of the guard / tackle versatility, I think the top two guys in my mind that will be able to start at guard and then move out to tackle would be Talisi Fuaga from Oregon State, as well as J.C. Latham from Alabama. I do think Troy Fautanu would be also a nice fit, and think he's a guy that could do that. But I really think, in terms of like body size, the way that they play, and how they move, Latham specifically would probably be the ladder that could be available within a few picks of the Eagles. And I think he makes the most sense because he's played guard in his career already at Alabama, and has already done it at a high level before kicking out to right tackle for Alabama this past season. Right now in his kind of development in his career, I would say right now he will be best maximized at guard, just because of how he plays with power, how he likes to be very physical at the point of attack, how heavy his hands are in terms of moving and displacing defensive linemen. And I think when you look at kind of that skill set combined, I think when you're trying to get a guy that can play right guard right now and then kick out the tackle, Latham makes the most sense in terms of doing so, just because he's done it already in his career and has that experience already. But when you look at Fuaga, he's kind of another guy when they're kind of built more top heavy than anything. But Latham, at the very least, right now, I would say he makes the most sense in terms of being able to do both things and playing right guard right now before kicking out to right tackle at some point in his career with the Eagles, once Lane Johnson retires.
And it's never bad to get another Alabama guy. Let's take it to 50 and 53, because in a lot of ways, I think those might be the most important picks for Howie, those day two picks. And boy, you need help at linebacker, Devin. I don't know if Edgerrin Cooper's going to make it that far. Anybody else stand out to you at that particular position?
Yeah, so at the linebacker position, there's a couple players that really intrigue me in terms of what they can bring, kind of their skill set. But I don't think they will be necessarily picks at 50 or 53. Obviously, Peyton Wilson, I think, is one of the top linebackers in the draft class and has medical concerns in terms of the knee injuries, shoulder injuries, and kind of just dealing with that over the course of his college career. But in terms of like guys like after those two picks, two guys that really interest me is Cedric Gray from North Carolina, and then Jalen Ford from Texas. I'll start with Ford from Texas because I think he's probably more of a early day three pick. Ford to me is kind of that guy that you take and you feel pretty good about. He's one of the underrated kind of coverage linebackers in this class. He does a really nice job in recognizing and seeing kind of throws coming over the middle of the field, being able to get his hands on it. Does a good job, kind of really with his eyes on the quarterback, being able to disrupt passing lanes. And he's also a really sound tackler as well in space. I think he did a really nice job. Obviously played in behind a really talented Texas defensive line that had Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. But when he was asked to make plays and need to make plays, he was able to do so and did at a high level. So to me, he's more of a early day three pick. But I think when you look at the linebacker class, there's really not too many options at 50 or 53 that you will feel good about taking them other than like guys like Edgerrin Cooper and Peyton Wilson. But the other player that I really like, Cedric Gray from North Carolina, I think he's kind of in that similar range, late day two, early day three. But really nice size, a bit big on the bigger side in terms of what he brings to the linebacker room. Also, really is kind of training towards the right direction in terms of dropping into coverage and making plays in the passing lanes, and then he's able to knife through the defense on running downs and make tackles at the line of scrimmage and at the backfield. Has nice straight line speed, able to come downhill. So those would be the two options that I really like at the linebacker class in terms of guys that may not be available or worth picking at 50 or 53. But if you decide to go the early day three route in the Eagles' fourth round pick and take it a linebacker then.
At @RealD_Jackson, make sure you follow Devin on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can read him, Inquirer.com. I'm going to put you in the Eagles draft room, Devin. You're part of the scouting staff, and I'm talking about picks 50 and 53. You're going to pound the table for somebody at one of those picks. Who does Devin Jackson want?
Yeah, at 50, I want Ricky Pearsall from Florida,
Nice.
the slot receiver from Florida.
Receiver. Yeah.
I think about with the Eagles needs, and especially the history of day two hits at the wide receiver position. To me, it just makes a lot of sense for them to go and target that with one of their second round picks. When I look at a guy like Ricky Pearsall, he checks a lot of boxes in terms of not only his speed and jumping metrics. They were, off the charts. He had one of the best three cones at the 40-yard dash, but one, he's a really reliable receiver and understands how to sit over the middle of the field, read zone defenses, create separation in the slot, have the sure-handedness to make those tough throws or tough catches over the middle of the field, but also his blocking upside as well. I think a lot of times we kind of gloss over the fact, or the willingness of receivers to block, just because obviously the name of the game is you want to catch the ball and makes things happen with the ball in your hands. But when you look at what Pearsall was able to do, especially at Florida over these last couple seasons, he also sprung a lot of big runs down the field. And I think that's such a value in a wide receiver, just because obviously the Eagles are run quite a bit, and now they have Saquon Barkley. It's going to be even more heightened to do so. But when Jalen Hurts is like running on the perimeter, or they have plays that bounce to the outside, it's going to be so important for those receivers to be blocking downfield, to spring bigger runs and be able to create more explosive plays. And I think Pearsall really brings that ability too. So when you look at those traits and what he's able to bring to the table, what he's able to do with the ball in his hands and being a reliable every down receiver, I think he would bring such value to the Eagles offense and really shore up a position that was a revolving door last year for the Eagles.
Yeah, and you got to start thinking about the future. It's going to be so expensive to keep A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, especially when Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase sign their contracts. It's going to be very expensive to keep both of those receivers. So you have to sort of balance the now with the future as well. Devin did a tremendous job. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm going to tap back into you after the draft, if that's okay. You obviously know your stuff. I appreciate it. Much thank you. Make sure you follow him again. It is at reald_Jackson, inquirer.com. Thank you very much, Devin. We'll be back here on Birds 365, day one of the offseason program. More. We'll close the show next.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Wrapping it up on this edition of Birds 365, Johnny Mac. Good stuff from Devin Jackson on the draft. Devin covering the draft for the Philadelphia Inquirer and some good insight. I love the final part of your conversation with his pick for a third receiver. The one area where there is an Achilles heel on the offense, I think, is that position, a third receiver, and I would love to see that. Or love to see the Eagles bolster up that receiver position from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, and I think that's you might even see an out of the box pick in the first round if somebody like Brian Thomas falls to 22. As I was talking about, you got to sign Devontae Smith to an extension. You have to sign AJ Brown down the road. He's under contract, but AJ's at $25 million per year. Devontae's going to be near that range, and it's only going to go higher for both if Devontae decides to wait for Justin Jefferson to sign Jamar Chase. That's going to rise the tide, so rising all boats. So everybody behind those two guys is going to want more money, and that's how the NFL works. So, the minute you sign Devontae, you can't go above 25 million because AJ, with all due respect to Devontae, the better player. So Eagles that's a delicate situation moving forward.
Has there been any more follow up on that conversation, John, or just still speculation?
Well, the Eagles are trying to work out. AJ, as I said, is under contract. That's about next year when his salary cap number will go up dramatically. Then they'll probably have to make a decision on reworking his deal to try to lower that cap number. Devontae's eligible for an extension right now. And if he were willing to take a team-friendly deal, the Eagles would get that done today. I've advocated that he should wait for Jefferson and Chase to sign, and that would elevate his own price tag. But we'll see if he has the patience. It's always individual. He might want the security. It's life-changing money either way. And he likes playing in Philadelphia, likes the organization. So that's what the Eagles will try to get done. And by no means should you be worried about Devontae Smith being here. He's going to be here. The question is, how much is it going to cost for the Eagles? And the longer it goes, the more it's going to cost. That's why the Eagles try to get these things done as quickly as possible.
Wrapping up a Monday here on Birds 365. Also, special thanks to Jeff Kerr in hour number one. What's on tap for tomorrow, Johnny Mac? I know we're talking draft.
Yeah, we're going to have our buddy BLG on in the second hour. Brandon Lee Gouton from bleedinggreennation.com at 9:20. Working on a guest. We'll try to get another draft guest in the first hour. But yeah, all week we're going to be doing draft. We're going to be delving deep into it and how the Eagles' offseason moves have affected their likely scenarios as we move forward. And yeah, some good intel from Devin Jackson. Jeff Kerr, always a tremendous guest. So
there's need, and then there's reality. And then there's what Howie wants to do.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, a lot of people don't like when, if he takes an offensive tackle at 22, a lot of people aren't going to like it. But, they might like it 3 years from now. Let's put it that way. So it's not just about right now. His job is a little bit different. And he's trying to service sort of two masters, trying to think about competing next season, but also making this team a consistent contender over the future number of seasons.
More details coming across the JAKIB Sports Network. Stay with us. Updates on who will be John McMullen's new co-host, who will coexist with John McMullen.
That's a tough job.
That's a good job, man. Listen, anytime I get an opportunity to jump on, John, with you, I learn a lot. Agree or disagree? I learn a lot from your the depth of your knowledge in terms of covering not only this team but also covering the league. And I do know now that you do hate. I think I knew before, but you do hate mock drafts.
I don't hate them. I think they're an exercise in futility, and I think people get too worked up about them. If you don't like them, just go to the next one.
Good stuff on Birds 365. Thanks to Zander for producing the show today. Again, Jeff Kerr, hour number 1. Devin Jackson from the Philadelphia Inquirer in hour number 2. We thank you for joining Birds 365, year number 4, on this Monday, April 15th. See you next time, everybody.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.